Hi everybody, it's Kris Hicks, Head of Press and Communications at UKIP. I'm joined once again with Carl Benjamin, UKIP
Hello.
member. Carl, nice to see you. It's been been a while, really, hasn't it?
It has. It's been a wild couple of months, hasn't it?
Indeed, many things have happened. Of course, we've had not one but two elections. We had the local elections, and then, of course, the European Parliament election. Could you sum up your experience of that, your first election that you've campaigned in? Give me a bit of a summation of your campaign in the Southwest, if you could.
Honestly, it did go exactly as expected. We knew we would get just creamed by the media, obviously, and so we don't care about them. We were kind of confrontational with them, which, to be fair, I think is the only way we can really do anything. Because I mean, there's no beating them at their own game. You know, they're not going to have you on, have a fair conversation with you, and then go, oh well, there we go, thank you very much. You know, so and so from UKIP. No, they're just going to hit you with smear and smear and smear. And this is all that they've done to UKIP from the inception of UKIP. So that was completely expected. So the events on the ground were really exciting, really charged. Loads of people turned out, and we ended up getting 60,000 votes, which wasn't bad, all things considered. But I mean, you know, let's be honest, we all knew that Nigel was going to walk it because he's, you know, the man, Mr. Brexit, during the Brexit betrayal for the MEP elections that we shouldn't be having at the head of the Brexit Party with millions of pounds at his back.
But with this, obviously, this campaign now, you've experienced it, but you're definitely up for more campaigns, more fighting, more political activity?
Oh yes, it honestly, it was thrilling to do, because when we turned up at each place, we never knew what was going to be there.
Sure.
You know, and so in Plymouth, where we've got literally hundreds of activists who are on our side who want to see, then you see members of the public coming in just to watch. It's great. And that's exciting in itself. But then you go to places like Totnes, which is a real sort of progressive area, and literally hundreds of middle-class lefties come out with like placards about fascism. Just like, what's fascism then? And they couldn't tell me. You know, they couldn't explain what the difference between like a constitutionalist and a fascist was, and they just ended up just yelling and throwing things. But you know, and I got milkshaked. So
yes, well, it seemed to start a trend in the country as well, and I think we need to mention really the shameful lack of action. It's certainly in the early days of the whole milkshake saga, both from the police and you know, the authorities who really should have clamped down on it. I mean, it wasn't just yourself as well. You had Tommy Robinson, you had Nigel Farage joining the club, so to speak. I wasn't milkshaked on the campaign trail myself, probably because nobody knows who I am, or they don't care. No, I mean, my own experience on the campaign trail was very interesting, particularly in Wales. I mean, the overarching feeling that I was picking up was just a mixture of despair and anger. I mean, there are a great many people, I'm convinced, who, you know, wanted to leave the European Union, who voted to leave, but they simply didn't vote at this European Parliament election.
Well, it was what, 35% turnout?
Approximately, I think, yeah, around about that. I mean, European Parliament elections are generally a bit lower, but yeah, the general sense of anger and apathy from so many people saying, look, we voted to leave, why hasn't this happened? And, you know, and on the campaign trail, the interviews I did, I said, you know, it's an absolute disgrace. We're actually sitting here fighting another European Parliament election. We should have left on March the 29th, after all.
Absolutely. I mean, I do completely agree that apathy regarding Brexit in particular was something that a lot of people were, you know, giving to me. Like the feeling was coming across from them. There was a lot of interest for subjects that weren't Brexit, I found.
Right.
Very few of because I'd give a platform to the members of the public to come up and talk talk about whatever they wanted, to be honest. And very few of them actually wanted to talk about Brexit. I mean, essentially, I think everyone has either made up their mind on the issue, wherever you stand. Yeah. You know, you either just want to get out, or you want to stay, regardless of what we voted for. And so, I found it most interesting that many people wanted to talk about other subjects. Like, I mean, quite sensitive ones as well. You know, I mean, in Totnes, after the lefty mob had abandoned us, a very brave lady, I think she was from Hull. She came up and said, "Look, you know, I'm a regular person, but I'm really upset with what mass immigration has done to my town, and so I've moved down to the southwest that's been spared the ravages of mass immigration, and I don't feel like I can talk about it, and I'll just be called a racist. I'll be insulted, blah blah blah." And so it was nice to actually hear her story without moralizing at her, you know, because I mean, at the end of the day, you can say, "Well, I disagree" or "I agree," whatever, but sitting there making like just hugely pejorative judgments about this woman, just because she's giving her life experience that is different to the rabid lefties of Totnes, and doesn't fit their narrative. It's truly horrible, because it brings us into the wider point of that's why so much stuff has gone on for so long without being addressed.
Yeah,
it's this kind of the narrative set that you can't go against, and if you do, you are a bad person. And I found a lot of people wanted to talk about things like that.
Well, I think it's interesting as well in terms of UKIP in a post-Brexit age. It kind of proves that, well, people don't really want to talk about Brexit at this point. They want to talk about a great breadth of issues, some of them quite controversial, and certainly the issues really that only UKIP are willing or prepared to talk about.
Absolutely.
So, for me, that shows a good positive for the party, for UKIP going forward. Of course, we've seen this Brexit Party being formed. They won the European Parliament election. I mean, what's happening right now, from what I can see from their side, they will probably be a bit worried on who the next Tory leader will be, who the next Prime Minister will be. I would probably think that Boris Johnson would probably do the most damage to their polling. I mean, we've seen it in the polling. He's very positively seen among Brexit Party supporters. I think obviously their polling will probably dip down there, and lo and behold, we may end up with a Prime Minister who actually gets us out of the European Union at the end of October. Which is fantastic. But I mean, in terms of the prospect of the Brexit Party, well, then logically it would then fade into nothing, because it wouldn't have a reason to exist at that point.
Well, the unifying principle of the party will have disappeared.
Yeah, quite. And it is a singular principle. I mean, it is the most universally single-issue political construct I think we've ever seen. I mean, UKIP was always, it was all about getting Britain out of the European Union, but we also had other policies and there were other things. And of course, this Brexit Party doesn't have a manifesto. It doesn't have any range of policies other than we'll get out of the European Union. And you could argue that, that's a very smart move, because then you can say to all leavers, all Brexiteers, look, we just want to leave, vote for us. The bad side of that is that if you contend a general election, for example, you've got to say to the people about a whole range of issues, well, what are you voting for? And that will cause a major problem for them if that does come up as well. Because as you said, look at Peterborough. Yeah. But if you've got somebody like Anne Widdecombe or Claire Fox in the same party, well, what kind of policies would they agree on? And the other point as well is that when you start instituting policy, while you may, you'll get X people who like that policy and you'll get Y people who get turned off. Yeah. You can't please everyone. So I think it's an interesting situation for them. I think Farage has a very short window to try and force some kind of general election. He's already putting out messages, saying he doesn't trust Boris Johnson. Of course, he wouldn't, because he doesn't want him there. It's not in his interest.
This is something that Jeremy Corbyn does to the Tories all the time, and it's always as transparent and thin as paper. It's like, my political opponent is a bad person. I don't trust them. Therefore, vote for me. It's like, you may as well have said nothing.
Well, indeed, yeah. Well, I mean, most politics these days, it's such low grade. I mean, it's basically saying we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's like, well, what, you weren't going to say the reverse, were you? But yeah. So the Peterborough by-election, I found really interesting. Actually, I'm surprised at the strength of the Tory vote. So as I recall, it was something 10,400-ish for Labour, which was the winning candidate. Then the Brexit Party at 9,800-ish, and then the Tories on about 7,500-ish, and then the Lib Dems on just under 5,000. Which is an interesting spread, but I mean, I really thought that more of the Tory vote was going to go across to the Brexit Party, and I thought they were going to win it.
Yeah, well, that's what the pollsters seem to think, certainly up until a certain point. But I mean, it demonstrates once again that there is that psychological division between people who vote in first past the post elections compared to those who vote in PR elections.
Well, I think your point to the manifesto is probably a good one. I don't think you can. I mean, if Peterborough is giving us an indication on anything, it's that like Brexit's a massive political issue as well. Like we probably won't face another political issue in our lifetimes that's as big as this. And on the strength of that, Mr. Brexit leading the Brexit Party, they didn't win. And that's really, I mean, I find that mind-blowing. I don't even know necessarily what to think about it. Because I would have thought, right, okay, I mean, Peterborough is a 60% Leave area. Yeah. So you think, right, okay, it's on a plate.
Yeah.
You know, Farage is the man, he's got the media machine, he's got the name, he's got the money, he's got the connections, he's got everything behind him, and Labour still won.
Yeah.
And the Tories still had a bloody good showing, all things considered. So, I mean, it really shows that I think that what we're doing with UKIP is sort of making it a multivariant party with lots of different issues that we've got, you know, activists who are very well versed in the fields in. I think that's definitely how we move forward, because I think it shows you can't just say, oh, Brexit, 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 or, you know, whatever, one issue. You know, I don't think that works. And what you were saying about the Tories with Johnson, I read his Telegraph piece saying, look, we're going to have to deliver Brexit somehow or the party's done.
Right.
I think that's probably true. I don't think it's going to happen as quickly as they're worried that it is, because the momentum that Farage came in with was enormous, you know, it really was. And that, I think that kind of put the wind up the Tories a bit, and essentially those people who, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, Johnson will flip, he'll flop, he's weak, whatever. Maybe, but I think they are looking into the existential sort of end of the Tory party, and I think they're aware of that. And so, I actually quite like Dominic Raab, because he is not afraid to call out the feminist bigots.
Right.
And he's my kind of leader in that regard.
Well, I thought Raab was possibly something close to the real deal up until the point where, right at the end, he said he'd support May's deal. But this, of course, was when Mrs. May was talking about stepping down, and so clearly it was part of his kind of leadership bid.
Because she's put provisos on this, hasn't she?
Yes, I've seen some comments on this where she's saying, well, if the newly elected leader of the party can't, you know, have a majority, have the majority support of MPs, then she would somehow, well, I don't even know, not step down or some sort, but she has resigned. So it's a bit of a peculiar situation. I mean, when a political party leader resigns, then of course the Electoral Commission is informed on that front, and you have to have a new leader in some way, shape or form, whether even it's an interim, within approximately 14 days. So I don't know, it's very strange. I mean, surely she would have had enough of this by now. I mean, I've seen the internal reports, and even her husband is saying, come on now, you know, let's enjoy our lives.
Yeah, it's time to retire. You know, it
fine.
really is.
And apparently, I mean, he's been her rock. I mean, he's been the last guy to fold on this, and you know, for him to do that, I mean, surely, just. I mean,
she's just standing on her own.
Yeah.
You know, no one's supporting her. What are they doing?
And well, a lot of people, the assessment of this internally, they're saying that, you know, she wasn't the most personable leader. She didn't really have many friends in the party. She didn't know her ministers that well, you know, on a personal level. So I think when things get tough in a political context, you need friends, you know, not just allies. You have to be friends on a political level. And apparently she just didn't have one, and it was just pure bunker mentality up until the end. I mean, it was a very interesting resignation. I mean, I never thought I'd see a prime minister break down into crying, quite frankly. You know, I mean, it's not since Thatcher really has this happened. You know,
I mean, I know I shouldn't feel bad for her, but I did feel bad.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is, I don't have any sympathy though. You know, for what she's done. She's made this bed, and now she gets to lie in it. But watching her cry, she's turning away. I'm like, oh, come on, Theresa, just go home.
Yeah. Yeah, well, she did go home. She went into
down. But you know what I mean, like, you know, like move on.
Move house.
Yeah.